Hello, this is Shonda Smith Baker from the Minneapolis Foundation, where I am the Senior Vice President of Impact and the host of Conversations with Shonda. What I hope people take away from my conversation with Van is to remember to connect to their bigger why, to find ways to use where they are right now for a bigger purpose that benefits other people. His relationship with Prince was really deep, and I think we can't underestimate the importance of having supporters and champions in your corner, that even when people may appear to be strong and doing everything the right way, that there's those dark moments in which you need people to say, okay, it's dark, there's light, like you need to go find it, and let's figure out how we can get you to a better place. His commitment to having Prince be seen beyond a musician, his quiet confidence, and the way that he did philanthropy is something that I think we can all learn from. Thank you for being part of it.
I'm excited.
All right. So, I have to talk about Prince with you.
Yes, of course.
And his birthday's coming up.
Mm-hmm. Though he did not celebrate it, but go ahead.
I know, yeah. Mm-hmm. But it's the day before my dad, so I used to always kind of tease my dad that I remember Prince's birthday, and then that's how I knew his. But the one thing that I really appreciated in your interviews, right when that happened, was your commitment to having people see Prince from more than his music and more than the 80s.
That's right.
And Prince has always been a staple around us from being here. And I think that we may have taken him for granted a little bit in terms of all that he brought. The other comment I want to make is that when I really got to know about his philanthropy is when he gave $1 million to Harvest Prep School to build out their building. And that building actually was where it used to be a nursing home. And our great-grandparents lived there. And then it became a school that my son went to.
Wow.
And Prince gave $1 million for it to build out.
Yeah.
So my question really is, what did you learn from kind of the humility and the quiet way that Prince did philanthropy?
Well, Prince saved my life. I left the Obama White House under fire in 2009. Most of the time when you leave a high-profile job like that, people run away from you. Your phone stops ringing. But Prince ran to me and called me and brought me into his world. And he had supported my work in the past, at a distance, but he really brought me in. And it really, I got a chance to really see up close. This guy was mainly a philanthropist. He was mainly somebody who was trying to make other people's lives better. But he was very skeptical of the model, and not to put anybody on Front Street, but there's some models where you have a foundation named after yourself. You're always at the ribbon cuttings. He really didn't like that at all. I think he justified it by saying he was a Jehovah's Witness and they're not supposed to take credit for their stuff. But I just think he thought that was corny, and he just didn't believe in it. He thought that he should just help people. So, he gave away millions and millions and millions of dollars. Most people don't know that the money came from him. In fact, that's how I met him. He was trying to send me an anonymous donation for Green for All, back when we were doing the green job stuff and trying to get solar jobs in the hood and organic, food opportunity jobs in the hood. And, I got this anonymous check, pretty big check. And I'm not accepting an anonymous check. I'm black in Oakland. This could be anything. I'm not trying to go to jail. So, he kept coming back. I kept sending it back. And then finally a lawyer called and said, would you please, he had like a desperate sound, would you please accept this check? And I was like, no, I'm not going to accept this check. And he's like, look, I can't tell you who it is, but I can just tell you this. His favorite color is purple. And I was like, oh. And I said, well, now you got another problem. He goes, what? I said, now I'm not going to cash it. I'm going to frame it. So we got the same problem. Yeah. So then, Prince thought that was funny, and he called, and that's how we became friends. But I met him as a philanthropist. I met him as somebody who was trying to give away money without letting anybody know, because he wanted the focus to stay on the work. And he wanted the focus to stay on the people who were doing the work. He did not want for his name and his persona to overshadow any of the need or any of the people who were meeting the need.
Hmm. So I've been in formal philanthropy in my role for about a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I think about Prince's role and then what you've been doing, what lessons might you have for me as I'm trying to do this work and supporting other leaders in their efforts?
Well, I mean, we're lucky to have you where you are. I mean, somebody with your heart and your background and stuff like that, you're going to be able to see through a lot of nonsense and get down to the root of things. And that part of the thing that I think Prince recognizes, that just because you have the best proposal or the best website or the best, the slickest this and the slickest that, or even the best ability to sell yourself, doesn't mean you're doing the best work. And Prince spent hours and hours and hours on the internet looking, searching for talent when it came to music, for people in need. He would send a check to pay somebody's court. You find out about some terrible court case in Nebraska someplace or Florida, and he would send money to help with the court costs. He would find group. He had a genius for finding the underdog, the unlikely, and not relying on their ability to find him, because of course nobody could find him. He lived in the Batcave, but also not rely on their ability to sell themselves to the world. He would look, and I think part of the thing that you have in the philanthropic community is people are so bombarded by the people who know how to play that game. You forget there's a lot of people who don't know how to play that game, who could actually do more with a marginal dollar or a marginal $10,000 than the people who know how to get the meeting and how to have the PowerPoint.
That's good insight for me, I think, as we move forward. So the Redemption Project.
Have you seen any of them yet?
I've seen all of them.
You have?
I have.
Oh,
I've seen all of
that.
them. I've seen all of them. And let me tell you,
wow.
The one in Oakland.
Yes. Donald Lacey.
Ugly cry.
Yes.
I was ugly crying.
Yeah.
There was so much love and beauty and exceptional kind of, I don't know.
It's magic.
It was, and the empathy, there's so much in that. So what drove you to do that?
I feel so blessed, there are not that many African-American men who have shows on cable television where we can say what we want, right? Where you can actually just have your own opinion. There's obviously the great Don Lemon. There's Al Sharpton. There's myself. There may be a couple more. There's not a lot of us. And so, you're lucky in a way. But then to have two, for CNN to give me an opportunity not just to have the Van Jones show on Saturday, every other Saturday. I share that 7 p.m. slot with David Axelrod. So we have the Axe Files every other Saturday at 7 o'clock, and then the Van Jones show. So we just share that, two Obama alums kind of sharing that slot. But then to have the opportunity to do a second show and for it to be an 8-part documentary series on restorative justice, first of all, dealing with the criminal justice thing, for me was important. I've worked on criminal justice for 25 years. I was a founder of the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights in Oakland, which is still standing and still providing services in Oakland. We closed, working with our allies and partners, 5 abusive youth prisons in California in the early 2000s, stopped them from building a super jail for youth in Oakland. And so, I was woke before they had alarm clocks. I've been working on this for a long time. And when you had to fight both political parties to pass any of these bills, because Democrats and Republicans were equally in favor of mass incarceration. So, I'm deeply rooted in this work. And I felt like the innocence conversation has finally gotten someplace. People understand that innocent people wind up in prison. That's important. I felt like the nonviolent drug offender conversation has gotten to a certain place where, frankly, it almost seems like almost everybody but me is a former nonviolent drug offender, because I've never done any drugs. Most people have. And so people can relate to that. But I felt like the next thing that need to happen is, what about the people who did it? And what about people who did real harm? Do they count? Are they human? Do they matter? Can they come back? Is there forgiveness? Is there empathy? And I felt like, especially in a time where it's just not fashionable to be empathetic, it's not fashionable to have compassion. It's about that cancel culture. I'm going to call you out. I'm going to block you. I mean, I don't care. And literally, you can say one wrong thing or have one wrong tweet, and you're done. And so to live in a society where empathy is not even fashionable, I said I want to have a show where we try to find empathy where it's the hardest. People are canceling each other and mad at each other over one line out of context. What about when somebody did some real harm to you and your family? And what came out of it, I've never seen anything like the response to this show, in that we are like 99% positive on Twitter. Twitter, I call hater. No matter what you do on Twitter, somebody's gonna kick your butt. Not this show. When it airs, it's very quiet on Twitter. There's almost no response to the show. And then at the end, it's just all of this just appreciation and people talking about, shedding tears and being moved and transformed and want to change their lives and seeing things totally differently. And to be able to do that, 43 minutes of television, to me, it's really the high point of my career so far.
Yeah, it's very powerful. I had a cousin that was murdered in 2011, and he was going to be a police officer. Mm-hmm. And he was shot and killed by someone I went to high school with.
Oh, my God.
And so I found myself listening and watching that and thinking on, am I at a place that I could forgive?
Mm-hmm.
And the question is still out, right?
No,
it's an unanswered question.
Tough.
But to sit face to face with him, I don't know. And so I think that there was a relatability to...
that one in particular.
Yeah.
I think, the great thing about the 8 episodes is we have all races and mixes of people. But that one, I think, first of all, Donald Lacey is a legend. He is Oakland. He's like a legend in Oakland. I mean, they literally named the whole town motto is Love Life after his daughter. And so, that's how major he is. Wow. And I was there marching behind him in all those marches in 97. And so then to go into San Quentin with him and to sit down and have that conversation was really powerful. So I think, but honestly, a part of what I'm hoping is that a different kind of television might emerge. This is not reality TV where they're like telling them what to say and can say it again. Can you be mad or can you be mad, or like trying to like create fake emotion and fake situations. This is as real as it gets. And every word that comes out of the mouth of somebody on my show is the authentic expression of somebody trying to get out of hell.
Yeah.
And also, it's not true crime. True crime is this sort of whodunit genre. And on the left, it's like trying to exonerate people who are, falsely convicted. On the right, it's, catch a killer.
Yeah.
But, our show is not true crime. It's about the truth long after the crime. Yeah. 10 years later, 15 years later, sometimes 20 years later, where healing still hasn't happened for the people who are the survivors, and where sometimes, surprisingly, growth has happened for the person who did wrong.
Right.
And that's a messy, complicated truth that we want to be able to touch on. And so people are saying, some of the critics have called and said they can't review it because they don't have any words. And I said, it's because we've lost the language of grace.
Oh, wow.
We've lost the language and literacy of compassion in the culture, so that when you see it, you literally can't describe what you're seeing because we've just come that far away. If somebody was slapping somebody, you'd have something to say.
Yeah.
But when somebody's hugging somebody, you don't know what to say.
Yeah.
And that's where we are as a culture. So I'm hoping that we can license, a different genre for television that might be more healing. We got to put some medicine in this sick culture, and that's what the show is.
Well, I really appreciate you leading in this way and being open enough to be reacting, because you react in real time as you're listening to the conversations. So on to the non-violent offender conversation. Sure. So my son said, make sure you ask him about Meek Mills and just what happens with that. And I think you've been working a little bit on Meek Mills, that is a non-violent offender, and some probation reform.
Sure. Well, Meek got a bogus charge at 19. Technically, there was a gun charge. Some people say, there's a gun charge, and it's not nonviolent. But even the cops recanted later on and said the whole thing was made up. So he had a bogus charge at 19, and he's now in his mid-30s. He's still on probation from that bogus charge at 19, and he's got 6 more years to go. And so in Pennsylvania, there's no caps on how long you can be on probation, and you can go back to prison for anything, like an illegal U-turn, showing up 10 minutes late for a meeting with your probation officer. Your aunt has a stroke in the next neighborhood over, you go check on her. Whoop, wrong neighborhood, back to prison, 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years. And it's just stupid. I mean, we're building this thing called the Reform Alliance. It's, Meek Mill, Jay-Z, six billionaire heavy hitters. I'm the CEO to get it going. Reformalliance.com if you want to be a part of it. We're just an anti-stupid coalition. Like, it's just real. It's like, this is just stupid. Like, I mean, somebody gets out of prison and they get a job, which, as you know, is almost a miracle. And then they get an apartment. Trying to get an apartment when you have a felony on your record, almost impossible. Then they get their kids back out of foster care. You know the kind of war that is. And then you make an illegal U-turn and you go back to prison for 3 months, 6 months, the apartment gone, kids gone, job gone, start all over nothing. And so, because people think, oh, well, you blew probation, you need to go back. You ain't learned your lesson. You blew parole, but because they're assuming that you're committing new crimes. Yeah. You're out there jacking cars. You're out there selling drugs. No. Non-crime, technical violations is the main reason people go back. I was 10 minutes late here, right? Yeah. I could have, if I were on parole and you were my parole officer, I could go to prison for 6 months behind stuff just that petty and that simple. And so the Reform Alliance is really, I see the Redemption Project as my sermon. And I see the Reform Alliance as my ministry, in that we have to, we can't just be woke and be tweeting. We have to change laws. Yeah. We have to change policies. We have to, and then, when we have people like Jay-Z, like Meek, who have these big platforms and who care, we have to help those people be effective at changing the law. And so, I'm very busy, but I feel very, very blessed. Not that many people have the opportunity to have a couple of shows on TV where they can say what they want. And not that many people get a chance to, work with people who can throw real punches to change laws. And right now I'm at that moment in my life where I can do both, and I feel blessed, man.
Yeah, really appreciate it. Why should the broader community care about criminal justice reform?
Well, because we're wasting genius. We are just wasting genius. We got people, listen, I spend more time in prisons probably than, I probably spent more time in prisons and going in and out for various, advocacy groups and the shows than, probably most people will in their whole lifetime. You know what I see? I see people I don't want to have to compete with. Yeah. Beautiful, creative, smart, resilient brothers and sisters who you're just like, wow, if this person had gotten the same breaks I had gotten, I'd be working for them. And I'm not joking. Like, I would be a receptionist in some of these dudes' worlds. I mean, I'm sorry. That's okay. I would be a receptionist in some of these dudes' world if I were lucky. We're wasting a lot of genius, and what does that mean? That means, you take somebody who could be a breadwinner, male or female, somebody who could be an entrepreneur, male or female, somebody who could be a teacher, somebody who could be a healer, somebody who could be an entertainer, somebody who could really add value, and you knock them out. Well, then their cousins, their nieces, their nephews, their children, their parents suddenly don't have a pillar. So then they fall. And then when they fall, they're grabbing somebody, they're pulling them down. All that comes back to us. So the positives are missing and the negatives are multiplied. And it's one thing, guys, we don't want to be soft on crime. We don't want to, be a part of, something that would encourage people to do bad things. Look, I'm not a part of the pro-crime lobby. Like, my kids were born in Oakland. I'm raising my kids and my family in LA. I'm not trying to have things be worse, but what I'm saying is we're making them worse. Because, nobody says when it's their kid on drugs, oh, you know what? Jimmy was trying drugs 17 years. Put him in prison for 17 years. I'll take. When it's your kids, what is going on? Therapy, rehab, let's figure out what the deal is. When it's your child, you have so much more empathy and your solutions are so much more humane. When it's somebody else's child, you say, well, hey, look, they should have broken the law. Who has not broken the law? And so we are hurting ourselves in a way. And people don't understand the magnitude. When you say there's 2 million people, 2+ million people locked up in U.S. jails and prisons, you say, well, the United States is 300 million people. That's not that many people. Hold on a second. China has 1 billion plus and only 1 million locked up. We have the biggest incarceration industry in the world in the United States, in the history of the world, in the land of the free, and mostly poor black and brown people who are doing stuff that I see people doing in country clubs, yacht clubs, and Ivy League campuses. And none of them ever go to jail. I went to Yale for law. Nobody can tell me anything. I saw kids doing drugs at Yale. Nobody ever called the cops. 4 blocks away in housing projects, kids doing fewer drugs with less money all have F's behind their name, felons.
Yeah.
And the kids who went to Yale, well, I can't hire you. You're a drug felon. Well, hold on a second.
I remember you.
Exactly. You're not fooling
Yeah.
me. So
Yeah.
what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, even all the way up to George W. Bush
Mm-hmm.
was a cokehead
Yep.
and became president of the United States. But Pookie and Snoopy and Shanae and them are going to be called, drug felons for the rest of their lives and be lucky to get an apartment.
Yeah.
Do you really think that there's nobody named Pookie, Snoopy, or Shanae that's at least as smart as George W. Bush? Probably a lot smarter, and yet won't have the opportunity. So who are we hurting?
Yeah.
So I think it's really important, and I think the reason that it happens, we don't know each other. We all in our own little phones, we're in our own little Ubers, we're in our own little suburbs, we're in our own little lives, and we don't know each other. And so, I piss off a lot of liberals because I don't believe in fighting separation with separation. I don't believe in fighting hate with hate, and I don't believe in fighting outrage with outrage. I want people. Van, you gotten soft in your old age. I can't stand. My God, you talk to those Republicans. You talk to Donald Trump. My God, Van Jones, what's happened to you?
Yeah.
You gotta fight fire with fire. Sometimes that's true, but not in the nursery.
Yeah.
Not in the nursery. You got a fire in the nursery where everything you care about is on the line. Sometimes you need to fight fire with water. And I spent a lot of time in red parts of this country for CNN. And for the Reform Alliance, the red parts of Pennsylvania where people are suffering and people are scared and people have the opioid epidemic and the suicide epidemic. And frankly, white folks just feeling like, hey, we used to be the top dogs. What's going to happen to us now? And change is hard and grief is real. And if we want people to do hard things, like give up being the top dogs and just be in a fair situation with everybody else, you got to be able to hospice that. You got to be able to hold that. You got to be able to explain to people that I understand that it's scary.
Yeah.
I understand that it's hard. And I know you can do it, and we need you to do it. That's different than saying, oh, you don't agree? You're a bigot. Oh, you don't agree? Screw you. Now I'm going to call you names on top of it. And so I make a lot of liberals mad, but what I know is that love wins. And when it gets harder to love, you got to love harder.
Yeah.
That's the problem. It's like right now, liberals are on trial. Trump is not on trial. We already know what Trump is.
Yeah.
People knew what Trump was in New York before he ever ran. They knew he was a con man. They knew he was a hustler. They knew what he was. That was available to anybody on planet Earth before he got there. So Trump's not on trial. We already know who he is.
Yeah.
Liberals and progressives and folks who care are on trial. Can we not become what we're fighting? Can we not turn into what we're fighting? Can we actually hold the love and the hope and the optimism and the empathy that defines us and not let him define us all down to something we can't even recognize? And so the Redemption Project, it's kind of my low-key response to a lot of what progressives are doing in terms of, trying to, you can't out-ugly Donald Trump. You can't, what are you talking, you're going to lose that.
Yeah.
You can't out anger and out-hate the far right. That's not, you're not even good at that. If you're liberal, you suck at that. You're not good at hating people. You're not even good at it.
Yeah.
Why would you even try to compete? I get a chance to meet a lot of good people on both sides, all races, all classes, all backgrounds. And the biggest problem that we have, and I'll close with this, is not the awful people. We have awful people doing awful things. That's true. You'd be a fool to say anything else looking at the news. But that's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is all the awesome people in both parties, all races, all backgrounds, who don't know what to do, who don't know how to find each other, who when we find each other don't know how to talk to each other, how to listen to each other. That's the big problem, is that the awesome people are coming up short. And I want to encourage the awesome people in every corner of this country. I want to encourage the good where I can find it. I'm going to fight the bad, but I want to encourage the good wherever I can find it.
So in closing, do you have any books that you would recommend to our audience?
I knew you were going to ask me that, and for me, obviously James Baldwin was such an important force in my early development. So I was anything by James Baldwin is going to make you a more human. Um, but trying to come up with just one book, I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, I get you on that. If there was one issue that you would want people to spend some time understanding better, would it be criminal justice reform?
All the issues that hit people at the bottom. Both political parties have let down their bases. It's Republican, man, how can you support these Democrats? You've been voting for Democrats for generations. You're still poor, man. Well, I got friends in Appalachia been voting for Republicans for generations. They poor too.
Yeah.
Maybe political parties don't do a good job helping poor people. And so when you're talking about the people who have the least human freedom and the least human dignity, those are the people who I care about. The people who are trapped in addiction, who are trapped in poor mental health, who are trapped in generational poverty, who are trapped in a broken criminal justice system. Those 4 issues: addiction, mental health, poverty, and criminal justice. Why? Because those issues will humble your ass. I don't care if you're Bill Gates. I don't care if you're a school teacher. You try to deal with those issues and all of a sudden you realize, I can't do this by myself. I need as much help. I need as many allies as I can. This is a major, major emergency every day, every hour in the lives of human beings. And therefore, for the grace of God, go me. How can I ask the firefighter, what political party are you in before you come over here?
Yeah.
I've never met anybody in prison who said, get me out of prison. I'm being brutalized. I miss my family. I miss my children. Get me out of here. But whatever you do, Van Jones, don't talk to any Republicans. Never heard that. I've heard, get me out of here no matter what it takes. And so for me, when we deal with the least of these, it brings out the best in everybody. To get out of poverty, you need liberal social programs. It's true, but you also need conservative personal values, too. It takes both. You can't run the same kind of libertine, do whatever you want to do kind of stuff that works for middle class and rich people who have means when you're poor. Yeah. You got to work hard. You got to stay out of trouble. It's like so we need each other to be able to deal with folks at the very, very bottom. And we forget that. We want to argue about the other issues, which are critical, and I work on them as well. But when we work on these other issues, we sometimes forget that where we're supposed to fight, we got to fight hard. It's true. Attacking immigrants, snatching babies from their mother at the border, that's despicable. We have to fight against that. Throwing folk out the military because they're transgender, despicable. All the police shootings, the stuff that we just have to fight. We can't back down, got to fight. But you can't only fight and still have a country.
Yeah.
Beyond the battleground, you have to find some points of common ground where we can actually continue to work together, but develop relationships and have some fellow feeling toward each other. And if we locate that common ground at the very, very bottom, it tends to bring out the best in all sides. And so that's really what I am committed to. It's a tough message. It's more nuanced. It's more complex than just screw Trump or screw the liberals.
And you have hope for the future?
I wouldn't say I have hope for the future. I say I have hope in the present. What I see in the present is good. I see good people who are scared. I see good people. I see a country trying to do something that no country has ever done successfully without violence, which is to have a majority ethnic group become a minority ethnic group without violence. We're asking white America to do that, and we insist that they do it, and they're going to do it. But the way that we are insisting that they do it can help or hurt, can hinder or accelerate, and but I have hope in the goodness of the people I see. When I meet conservative white guys who voted for Trump, who are wearing NRA T-shirts and MAGA hats, who are former coal miners, and I sit down with them and I hear their story from their point of view, I can understand how they might feel unappreciated. They might feel disrespected. They might feel misunderstood. They might feel that they were screaming out for help and nobody listened. And I also know that when I tell them I'm mad at you, and I'm not just mad at you because I think you've been seduced by bad ideas. I'm mad at you because we've been screaming for help and you didn't come help us either. So maybe you feel let down. I feel let down too. How do we help each other? Those conversations usually turn out beautifully. And that level of honesty and that level of care, I want it to be more visible. We can't let Twitter Like, Black Twitter will kick your ass. I mean, if you say
it will, but sometimes it's funny.
Yeah. But I'm saying, but
Yeah.
I tell my friends on Black Twitter, I said, look, here's what I know. There ain't no Black Twitter. It's white Twitter that Black people use. So I'm not impressed. That's why I'm working with Yes We Code, so we can have our own Twitter, and we can have our own technology and spread that out. But listen. Most people are good people. They may not have the knowledge or the opportunity to do good. They may not have the space in their lives to do good, but most people are good people on all sides. Yeah. And I stand in that.
Okay. Do you want to say anything about Yes We Code before we close?
Look, Yes We Code is dope. Prince started it, and we're trying to keep it alive. And we just hired a brilliant young African American to run it. And we got partnerships with Infor and Apple and PricewaterhouseCoopers, and hopefully with you guys. And I just try to stay busy doing the stuff that Prince taught me. I mean, Prince got more stuff done in a day than most people get done in an entire lifetime. I've never been around anybody as generative and generous and creative as that man. Being around him, like you would spend a day with him and you live off of it for like a month, because so many things that he would say and just the way that he would do stuff. And he would look at you and he'd just look at you. And you be giving your best stuff, man. You be flowing. You just knowing you just killing it. I mean, you just feeling yourself. I'm giving myself goosebumps. You know what I mean? You look over him and he look at you like a sober person looking at a drunk person. Like, this dude really think he's saying something. Wow. And then he would just be like, why would you do that just in the United States, fan? You're like, what? I mean, don't you think other people, not in the United States, would need something like that? Why would you limit it just to the United States? That's all you talk about, the United States. Or you be mad, complaining about something, and going off, and everybody's getting an agreement about how bad something is, and he'd be like looking so just disgusted. And you realize, oh, he ain't participating no more. And you're like, what are you thinking, Prince? And he'd be like, then what do you want? Why don't we focus on that?
The wisdom of Prince, I tell you, I appreciate you taking it in. I appreciate you forwarding it both, and I think how you are operating and inspiring.
I'm trying to be purple.
Trying to be purple. We're all trying to be purple around here. I think often in my role, how do we use the platform? How do we use the power of philanthropy to raise the issues that need to be more visible in community? And so I'm just learning. I'm soaking it in. I appreciate your time.
Well, I appreciate you. And look, the thing about it is that for whatever reason, you can bring people to the table. And a lot of times, and people just need to know each other. And don't always bring them to the table with these carpets and all these fluorescent lights and air conditioning. Have people come to the homeless shelter together. Make them go to the prison together. Make them ride on the long bus together. Don't show up in different Ubers. Make them meet you here and then go together, because that's when a lot of the, lack of a better term, a lot of the BS falls away. When people have been eating them little nasty sandwiches in the lobby together. That kind of stuff. We do too much stuff in fancy places. Fancy places don't bring out good in people. And so you can, but because you have the checkbook and you have the ear of everybody, you can get people to walk in these humble steps, man. And that's very consistent with who you are. So it's not like anybody think that's too weird. You know what I mean? You care about people. It's obvious. And so I just say, man, we just have to humble ourselves, because it's the big people letting the country down. It's not the little people. Little people working hard every day. It's the big people letting the country down.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Please check out the Minneapolis Foundation website to find more episodes of this podcast, information on upcoming events, and for my book recommendations. Thank you to Weber Shandwick for their partnership and support in making this podcast come alive.